Alexander Sterling felt the silk of his wedding suit against his skin as he stood at the altar. His world nothing but darkness and the soft echo of whispers filling the grand cathedral. The accident 3 weeks ago had stolen his sight, but not his other senses. He could smell the white roses his wedding planner had chosen, hear the nervous shifting of 300 guests behind him, and feel the weight of expectation pressing down on his shoulders like a heavy blanket. But something was wrong. Terribly, frighteningly wrong. "Do you, Elena Richardson, take Alexander Sterling to be your husband?" The priest's voice boomed through the cathedral, and Alex waited for the familiar sound of his bride's voice. Elena had a particular way of speaking, crisp, precise, with just a hint of her private school accent that she never quite lost. "I do." The voice that answered was nothing like Elena's. Alex's blood ran cold. This voice was warmer, softer, with a musical quality that made his heart skip in a way Elena's never had. This voice carried kindness where Elena's carried calculation. This voice belonged to someone else entirely. His hands trembled as he reached out during the ring exchange, feeling smaller, more delicate fingers than he remembered. Elena had long, slim fingers with perfectly manicured nails that she was always showing off. These hands were different, shorter, with calluses that spoke of real work, real life beyond the privileged bubble they both lived in. "By the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride." Alex leaned forward, his heart pounding so hard he was sure everyone in the cathedral could hear it. When their lips met, he knew with absolute certainty that this was not the woman he was supposed to marry. Elena's kisses were always perfectly controlled, like everything else about her. This kiss was gentle, nervous, and filled with an emotion he couldn't name but that made his entire body respond in ways it never had to Elena. The cheers of the crowd washed over him as they turned to face their guests, his new wife's arm linked through his. He could feel her trembling, could sense her nervousness radiating off her in waves. Elena was never nervous. Elena was always in complete control. "Smile and wave," she whispered so quietly only he could hear, and even those 3 words confirmed what he already knew. This was not Elena Richardson. This was someone else, someone who had somehow taken his bride's place at their own wedding. As they walked down the aisle together, Alex's mind raced with questions that made his head spin. Where was Elena? Who was this woman beside him? Why had no one else seemed to notice the switch? And most importantly, what did this mean for his life, his company, and the merger that this marriage was supposed to secure? The reception passed in a blur of congratulations and speeches. Alex smiled and nodded at all the right moments, but his attention was focused entirely on the woman beside him. She spoke to the guests with confidence, but he could hear the slight tremor in her voice when she thought no one was listening. She knew exactly who everyone was, answered questions about their relationship with Elena's memories, but there were tiny details that didn't quite fit. When Elena's father asked about their first date, this mystery woman's description was almost right, but she mentioned details that Elena had never told him. When his own mother asked about their honeymoon plans, her response was more enthusiastic than Elena had ever been about anything. "We should probably head home soon," she whispered to him during a quiet moment between toasts. "You must be exhausted." "Home." Elena had always referred to his penthouse as your place, or the apartment. She had never called it home, even though they had been living together for 6 months. The ride to his penthouse was silent except for the soft jazz playing through the car's speakers. Alex could feel her tension beside him, could sense her looking at him even though he couldn't see her. When they arrived at his building, she guided him to the elevator with a gentle touch that was nothing like Elena's usually firm grip. "Are you okay?" she asked softly as they rode up to his floor. It was such a simple question, but Elena had never asked him that. Not once, not even after his accident. "I'm fine," he lied because what else could he say? That he knew she wasn't his wife? That someone had apparently orchestrated the most elaborate deception he could imagine? That despite his confusion and anger, he was more attracted to this stranger than he had ever been to Elena? In his apartment, she helped him out of his jacket with careful hands, hanging it in the closet exactly where Elena always did. But when she turned on the lights, he heard her soft gasp. "What is it?" he asked. "Nothing," she said quickly. "Just, it's beautiful. The view." Elena had seen this view 100 times. She would never gasp at it. Alex stood in his living room, still in his wedding suit, knowing that the woman he had just married was not the woman he was supposed to marry. The weight of the deception settled over him like a heavy fog, and for the first time since his accident, he felt truly helpless. "I should let you rest," she said, and he could hear her moving toward the guest room. Elena always slept in his bed. They had been engaged for 2 years, living together for 6 months. She had never once chosen the guest room. "Wait," he called out, surprising himself. "What's your name?" The silence that followed lasted so long he wondered if she had left the room. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. "Elena. You know that." But they both knew she was lying. And somehow, that made everything even more complicated. Alex stood alone in his living room, surrounded by wedding gifts and flower arrangements, knowing that his life had just changed in ways he couldn't begin to understand. Tomorrow he would demand answers. Tonight, he would try to figure out how a complete stranger had just become his wife, and why the thought of that didn't terrify him as much as it should. The apartment fell quiet except for the soft sound of the guest room door closing. Alex touched his lips, still feeling the memory of that kiss so different from any Elena had ever given him. Whoever this woman was, whatever game was being played, one thing was certain. His perfectly planned life had just taken a turn into completely uncharted territory. And despite everything, he found himself more curious than angry about where this unexpected journey might lead. 3 weeks earlier, Alexander Sterling had been on top of the world. His tech company was worth billions, his engagement to Elena Richardson was the talk of high society, and his biggest worry was choosing between the Bahamas and the Swiss Alps for their honeymoon. He had been driving home from his bachelor party, completely sober but exhausted from a weekend of his friends' attempts to convince him he was making a mistake. The truck ran the red light at 40 miles per hour. Alex remembered the screech of brakes, the sound of metal crushing metal, and then nothing until he woke up in a hospital bed with bandages covering his eyes and doctors using words like severe trauma and uncertain prognosis. The good news, Dr. Martinez had told him 3 days after the accident, is that the damage to your brain is minimal. You suffered a severe concussion, but there's no permanent cognitive damage. And the bad news? Alex had asked, though he already knew. The trauma to your optic nerves is extensive. Right now, we can't determine if your blindness is permanent or temporary. It could be weeks, months, or... Dr. Martinez had trailed off, but Alex understood. Could be forever. Elena had been there for that conversation, sitting in the chair beside his bed, her hand resting lightly on his arm. But Alex could feel her tension, could sense her discomfort even through his own shock and fear. "We'll figure this out together," she had said, but her voice lacked conviction. The next 2 weeks were a crash course in learning to navigate a world without sight. Physical therapists taught him to use a white cane. Occupational therapists showed him how to organize his apartment so he could find things. Technology specialists introduced him to screen readers and voice-activated devices that would help him manage his business. Elena came to most of the appointments, but Alex could feel her growing more distant each day. Their conversations became stilted, focused on practical matters rather than their future together. She stopped mentioning the wedding except when absolutely necessary. "Maybe we should postpone," she suggested one evening as they sat in his hospital room. "Give you time to adjust." "The invitations have been sent," Alex replied. "The deposits are paid. Both our families are expecting this wedding." What he didn't say was that this wedding was about more than their relationship. The merger between Sterling Tech and Richardson Industries had been in the works for 3 years. Their marriage would seal a deal worth hundreds of millions of dollars and create one of the most powerful tech conglomerates in the country. Postponing the wedding would mean postponing the merger, and both their fathers had made it clear that wasn't an option. "I know, but," Elena started. "But what? You don't want to marry a blind man?" The silence that followed told him everything he needed to know. Elena Richardson was beautiful, intelligent, and came from a family as wealthy and powerful as his own. They had been introduced by their parents at a charity gala 3 years ago, and their relationship had progressed exactly as everyone expected. Dates to high-profile events, carefully coordinated social media posts, an engagement announcement in the business section of the newspaper. It was the perfect partnership between two perfect people from two perfect families. Except Elena had never signed up to be married to someone with a disability. "It's not that simple, Alex," she said finally. "This changes everything. Your business, our social life, the way people will see us." "The way people will see you, you mean?" "That's not fair. Isn't it?" Alex had turned toward the sound of her voice, wishing he could see her face. "I'm still the same person, Elena. I still own the same company, have the same bank account, live in the same penthouse. The only thing that's changed is that I can't see." "You don't understand what it's like," Elena had snapped, her careful composure finally cracking. "Everyone looking at us, whispering about how tragic it is, how brave I am for staying with you. I never wanted to be someone's inspiration or charity case." The honesty of her response had cut deeper than any of the physical pain from his injuries. Alex had always known that Elena was more interested in what he represented than who he was, but hearing her say it so bluntly was still shocking. "So what are you suggesting?" he asked. "I don't know," Elena admitted. I need time to think." But time was the one thing they didn't have. The wedding was scheduled for 3 weeks after his accident, and canceling it would create a media circus that neither family could afford. Elena's father had political ambitions, and Alex's father's business empire depended on the appearance of stability and success. A broken engagement, especially under these circumstances, would be seen as a sign of weakness. Elena left that night and didn't come back for 2 days. When she finally called, her voice was different, more distant, more formal. "I've been thinking about what you said," she told him. "About the wedding still happening. And maybe you're right. Maybe we can make this work." But Alex could hear the doubt in her voice, could sense that she was forcing herself to say the words. Over the next week, as they made final preparations for the wedding, Elena seemed to be going through the motions. She answered questions from the wedding planner with short, distracted responses. She barely spoke during their final dress-fitting appointment. When the priest asked if they wanted to write their own vows, she quickly said no. The night before the wedding, Elena had dinner with Alex at his penthouse. It was supposed to be a romantic evening, their last night as an engaged couple. Instead, it felt like a business meeting. "Everything is ready for tomorrow," Elena said as they finished their meal. "The flowers, the music, the photographer. Your parents seemed happy at the rehearsal dinner." "You sound like you're reading from a checklist," Alex observed. "I'm just trying to make sure everything goes smoothly." "Elena," Alex said, reaching across the table to find her hand. "Are you sure about this? About us?" Her hand was cold under his, and he could feel her pulse racing. "Of course," she said, but she pulled her hand away. "Why would you ask that?" "Because you've barely touched me since my accident. Because you sound like you're planning a corporate event instead of our wedding. Because I can hear in your voice that you'd rather be anywhere else." "That's not true," Elena said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Then kiss me," Alex said. "Kiss me like you used to." The pause that followed felt endless. When Elena finally kissed him, it was brief, perfunctory, like kissing a relative goodbye. "I should go," she said, standing up. "Tomorrow is going to be a long day." After she left, Alex sat in his dark apartment, wondering if he was making the biggest mistake of his life. But it was too late for second thoughts. The wedding was in 12 hours, 300 guests were expecting a celebration, and 2 families were counting on a business deal that would change everything. He had no idea that Elena Richardson was sitting in her car in his parking garage, crying and dialing her best friend's number. "Amara?" Elena's voice was shaky when the call connected. "I need you to come over. I think I'm about to do something terrible." Alex went to bed that night thinking his biggest challenge would be getting through his wedding ceremony without being able to see. He had no way of knowing that his bride was planning something that would change both their lives forever. Amara Johnson had been asleep for exactly 2 hours when her phone rang. She fumbled for it in the darkness of her small studio apartment, squinting at the bright screen that showed Elena's name. "Elena? It's 3 in the morning. What's wrong?" The sobbing that came through the phone was unlike anything Amara had ever heard from her best friend. Elena Richardson never cried, never lost control, never called anyone at 3 in the morning unless someone had died. "I can't do it," Elena choked out between sobs. "I can't marry him, Amara. I can't." Amara sat up in bed, instantly awake. She had known Elena since college, had been her maid of honor at 3 different charity events where Elena practiced her wedding smile, had helped her pick out her wedding dress 6 months ago. Elena had been planning this wedding for 2 years with the precision of a military operation. "Elena, slow down. What happened? Where are you?" "I'm outside his building. I just left his apartment and I can't go through with it. He's blind, Amara. He's actually blind, and everyone expects me to just pretend that doesn't matter." Amara knew about Alex's accident, of course. Elena had told her about it, but in the detached way she talked about everything else in her life, like it was a problem to be managed rather than a tragedy to be felt. "Come over," Amara said. "We'll talk about this." 30 minutes later, Elena was pacing around Amara's tiny apartment in her designer dress and heels, looking completely out of place among the second-hand furniture and student artwork on the walls. "You don't understand," Elena said for the 5th time. "Everyone is going to be looking at us, judging us. They'll either pity him or think I'm some kind of saint for staying with him. I never signed up for that kind of attention." Amara watched her friend destroy herself with anxiety and felt a familiar mix of frustration and sadness. Elena had everything: money, beauty, opportunities that most people could only dream of, but she lived in constant fear of what other people thought. Maybe they'll just think you love him, Amara suggested quietly. Elena stopped pacing and stared at her. Love him? Amara, be serious. This was never about love. This marriage is a business arrangement between our families. Love was supposed to be a bonus, not a requirement. So you're just going to leave him at the altar? In front of 300 people? On the morning of your wedding? I can't marry him. Elena's voice rose to a near shriek. I tried to convince myself I could handle it, but I can't. Every time I look at him, all I can think about is how different everything is going to be. The way people will treat us, the way they'll treat me. I'll never just be Elena Richardson again. I'll always be the woman who married the blind billionaire. Amara had taught special education for 5 years. She had worked with children who had every kind of disability imaginable, and she had seen how fear and ignorance could turn people into monsters. But she had also seen how love and understanding could create miracles. Have you told him how you feel? Amara asked. I can't. His parents have already invested millions in the merger. My father's political career depends on this alliance. If I back out now, both our families will be ruined. So you're trapped. We're all trapped, Elena corrected. Unless. She stopped pacing and turned to face Amara with an expression that made Amara's stomach drop. Unless what? You could take my place. The words hung in the air between them like a bomb waiting to explode. Amara stared at her best friend, wondering if the stress had finally made Elena lose her mind completely. That's the most ridiculous thing you've ever said, and you once suggested we fake your death to get out of your cousin's wedding. I'm serious, Elena said, sitting down on the couch beside Amara. Think about it. We're the same height, same hair color. With the veil and makeup, no one would be able to tell the difference. Especially Alex. Elena, that's insane. That's fraud. I don't even know what that is, but it's illegal and wrong and completely impossible. Is it? Elena leaned forward, her eyes bright with desperate hope. You know everything about my relationship with Alex. You've heard every story, been to every family dinner, helped me plan this whole wedding. You probably know more about our relationship than I do. That's different from actually living it. You'd only have to do it for a few weeks, Elena rushed on. Just until I can figure out how to fix this mess. Maybe I can convince our parents to postpone the merger, or find another way to structure the deal that doesn't require marriage. Amara stood up and walked to her window, looking out at the city lights. Elena's plan was completely crazy, but she could hear the genuine panic in her friend's voice. Elena was many things: shallow, self-centered, obsessed with appearances, but she wasn't cruel. If she was this desperate to escape her wedding, there had to be more to it than just embarrassment. What about Alex? Amara asked without turning around. Don't you think he deserves to know the truth? He'll get the truth eventually. And honestly, you'd probably be better for him than I would be. You actually care about people. You know how to help people with disabilities. You might actually be able to make him happy. That's not the point, Amara said, though she had to admit she was curious about Alexander Sterling. Elena's stories about him never quite added up. She described him as cold and controlling, but then would mention things he had done that sounded thoughtful and kind. Please, Amara, Elena's voice was small and broken. I know it's crazy, but I'm drowning here. I can't breathe when I think about walking down that aisle. And if I don't show up, both our families will be destroyed. Amara turned back to face her friend. Elena was crying again, her perfect makeup streaked down her cheeks, her hands shaking. Even if I wanted to help you, which I'm not saying I do, how would this possibly work? People will notice the difference. Not if we're careful. The ceremony is only an hour and Alex can't see. At the reception, you just have to smile and nod and let other people do most of the talking. Everyone will be drinking and celebrating, they won't be looking that closely. What about after? What about the honeymoon? Elena looked away. We weren't really planning to. I mean, it's more of a business arrangement. Alex understands that. Amara's heart stopped. Different how? More present, I guess. More interested in what I'm doing. It's nice. The simple comment broke Amara's heart. Elena had been with this man for 2 years, lived with him for 6 months, and he was surprised that his wife would show interest in his work or offer to help him adapt to his new circumstances. On the drive home, Alex was quiet, but Amara could sense him thinking. When they reached his building, he turned toward her in the car. Can I ask you something? Of course. Why did you marry me? The question was so unexpected, so vulnerable, that Amara almost told him the truth right there. Instead, she found herself saying something that Elena would never have said but that felt completely honest. Because I think you're a good man who deserves to be loved. Alex was quiet for so long that Amara wondered if she had said the wrong thing. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft. I've never heard you say anything like that before. That night, as they ate dinner together, takeout because Amara didn't want to risk cooking something Elena would never attempt, Alex seemed more relaxed than he had been since she'd known him. He told her stories about his childhood, asked her questions about her day, and laughed at her jokes in a way that made her forget, for brief moments, that she was living a lie. When it was time for bed, the awkwardness returned. Elena had told her that she and Alex hadn't been physically intimate in months, but sharing a home as a married couple still created an intimacy that felt both natural and terrifying. Good night, Alex said as they stood outside their respective bedroom doors. Good night, Amara replied. But as she lay in the guest room bed, staring at the ceiling, she couldn't stop thinking about the way Alex had smiled when she offered to help him at work, or the sound of his laugh when she made a joke about the terrible takeout they'd ordered. She was falling for a man who thought she was someone else, and every day she stayed would make the eventual truth more devastating for both of them. She had promised Elena just a few weeks. She could only hope that would be enough time to figure out how to fix the mess they had created without destroying the unexpectedly wonderful man who was caught in the middle of it. 2 weeks into their marriage, Amara had fallen into a routine that felt more natural than any life she had ever lived. She woke up early to make coffee for Alex, drove him to work, spent her days helping him adapt to running his company without sight, and came home to evenings filled with conversation that never felt forced or artificial. The problem was that none of it was real. You've been different since the wedding, Alex said one morning as they walked through the lobby of his office building. His hand was resting lightly on her arm for guidance, but the touch had begun to feel less like necessity and more like choice. More, yourself. Amara almost laughed at the irony. She had never been less herself in her life, but somehow she was more comfortable with Alex than she had ever been with anyone. Maybe marriage suits me, she said, then immediately worried that Elena would never have said something so sincere. It suits us, Alex agreed, and the warmth in his voice made her stomach flutter in ways that were becoming harder to ignore. At the office, Claire had started greeting Amara like an old friend, and the other employees had begun including her in their casual conversations. For the first time in her life, Amara felt like she belonged in a world of important decisions and meaningful work. Mrs. Sterling, one of the junior developers, called out as they passed his cubicle. That suggestion you made yesterday about the accessibility features? We've started implementing it and it's going to help thousands of users. Amara smiled, remembering the conversation. Alex had been frustrated by his company's website, which wasn't compatible with screen readers. She had suggested some simple changes based on her experience working with visually impaired students. I'm glad it helped, she said. In Alex's office, she had started keeping her own notes about his meetings and projects. She organized his schedule in a way that made sense for someone who couldn't see, created audio summaries of important documents, and even started learning the screen reader software so she could help him navigate it more efficiently. You don't have to do all this, Alex said one afternoon as she finished reading him a quarterly report. Claire can handle most of the administrative stuff. I want to help, Amara said honestly. I like being useful. Alex was quiet for a moment. Elena, can I tell you something? The fake name always sent a spike of guilt through her chest, but she nodded. I was terrified about getting married, Alex admitted. Not because of you, but because I thought my blindness would change everything between us. I thought you'd see me as broken or helpless. Amara's heart ached. You're not broken. But I am different. I can't do things the same way I used to. I need help with things that should be simple. Everyone needs help with things, Amara said firmly. That doesn't make you broken. That makes you human. Alex turned toward the sound of her voice, and she could see something shift in his expression. I don't think I've ever heard you talk like this before, he said. So certain, so passionate about something. Amara realized she had gotten carried away, spoken from her heart instead of trying to imitate Elena. But before she could worry about the mistake, Alex continued. I like it. I like seeing this side of you. That evening, Alex suggested they take a walk around his neighborhood. It was something Elena would never have suggested. She hated walking anywhere she couldn't wear heels, but Amara had been feeling restless in the apartment. Are you sure? Alex asked when she agreed enthusiastically. You usually prefer staying in. I thought a change of pace might be nice, Amara said. They walked slowly through the tree-lined streets, Alex's hand resting on her arm while she described the houses and gardens they passed. It was a simple activity, but there was something intimate about being his eyes, sharing the world with him through her words. "There's a couple across the street walking their dog," Amara narrated. "The dog is tiny and fluffy, and it keeps trying to chase leaves that are blowing in the wind." Alex laughed. "What kind of dog?" "I think it's a Pomeranian. It's about the size of a loaf of bread and looks like it thinks it's a wolf." "I've always wanted a dog," Alex said. "But Elena? I mean, you always said they were too messy." Another small revelation about Elena's character that made Amara sad for Alex. She tried to imagine coming home to this wonderful man every day and complaining about hypothetical dog hair instead of appreciating his kindness and humor. "Maybe we could reconsider," Amara found herself saying. "Dogs can be trained to help people with visual impairments." Alex stopped walking and turned toward her. "You'd really be okay with getting a dog?" The hope in his voice broke her heart. "I think it could be wonderful." That night, they sat on his couch researching guide dog programs and rescue organizations that specialized in training therapy animals. Alex was more animated than Amara had ever seen him, talking about the breeds that would work best and the training process they'd need to go through. "We should probably wait until after the honeymoon," Alex said as they scrolled through pictures of available dogs on his tablet. "Speaking of which, have you thought any more about where you'd like to go?" Amara froze. Elena had never planned a honeymoon, had never shown any interest in traveling with Alex. But sitting here with him, imagining a future together that could never exist, the idea of a romantic getaway was both thrilling and heartbreaking. "Where would you like to go?" she asked, deflecting. "Somewhere quiet. Maybe a cabin in the mountains or a house on the beach. Somewhere we could just be together without any distractions." The way he said it, with such genuine longing for time alone with his wife, made Amara want to cry. Elena had described their relationship as a business arrangement, but it was clear that Alex hoped for something real and meaningful. "That sounds perfect," Amara said, meaning it completely. Later that night, as she lay in the guest room listening to Alex moving around in his bedroom, Amara tried to call Elena for the 5th time that week. Her friend hadn't answered any of her calls, hadn't responded to texts, and seemed to have disappeared entirely from social media. When Elena finally called back at midnight, Amara could hear music and laughter in the background. "Amara, how's married life treating you?" Elena sounded drunk and careless, like she was at a party instead of dealing with the crisis she had created. "Elena, we need to talk. This has gone on long enough. Alex is starting to suspect something, and I can't keep lying to him." "Suspect what?" "You're doing great. I saw the pictures from the charity gala last week. You looked perfect." Amara had forgotten about the photographers at the gala. Seeing herself in the society pages as Mrs. Alexander Sterling had been surreal and disturbing. "That's not the point. This isn't fair to Alex and it's not fair to me. When are you coming back?" "I'm still working on it," Elena said vaguely. "These things take time. Just give me a few more weeks." "Elena, I think Amara stopped herself before she could admit what she was beginning to realize. That she was falling in love with Alex. That every day with him made her want to stay longer. That the thought of Elena coming back and reclaiming her life was becoming unbearable. "You're what?" "Nothing. Just, please figure this out soon." After Elena hung up, Amara sat in the dark guest room, thinking about the way Alex had looked when he talked about getting a dog, the way he laughed at her jokes, the way he had started reaching for her hand automatically when they walked together. She was living a beautiful life that belonged to someone else, falling in love with a man who thought she was someone else, and with every passing day, the truth became more complicated and more devastating. Tomorrow she would have to wake up and pretend to be Elena again. But tonight, she allowed herself to imagine what it would be like if this life was really hers, if the man sleeping in the next room really loved her for who she was instead of who he thought she was. It was a dangerous dream, but it was the only thing that made the deception bearable. 3 weeks into the marriage, Amara was reading quarterly reports to Alex in his office when Claire knocked on the door with an expression that made Amara's stomach drop. "Alex, there's someone here to see you," Claire said carefully. "She says she's an old friend, but she's being very insistent." Before Alex could respond, a familiar voice cut through the air like a knife. "Alexander, darling, you're impossible to reach these days." Elena Richardson stood in the doorway of Alex's office, looking every inch the wealthy socialite she had always been. Her blonde hair was perfectly styled, her designer dress was wrinkle-free despite what must have been a long flight, and her smile was the practiced expression she used at charity events and business dinners. Amara felt the blood drain from her face. Alex turned toward Elena's voice with obvious confusion. "Elena?" he said, but there was something uncertain in his tone. "What are you doing here? What kind of greeting is that for an old friend?" Elena laughed, moving into the office like she owned it. I was in town and thought I'd stop by to congratulate you on your recent marriage. I heard it was quite the event. Amara's heart was pounding so hard she was sure everyone in the room could hear it. Elena's eyes met hers across the office, and the look that passed between them was loaded with meaning that Alex couldn't see. Elena Richardson, Elena said, extending her hand toward Alex. We met at the Morrison Charity Gala last year. I'm sure you remember. Alex stood up slowly, clearly trying to place the voice that sounded so familiar but was coming from the wrong person. Of course, he said politely, shaking Elena's hand. Nice to see you again. And you must be the new Mrs. Sterling, Elena said, turning to Amara with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. How lovely to finally meet you properly. Alexander has told me so much about his wife. The emphasis Elena put on the word wife made Amara's skin crawl. This was a game to Elena, a power play that put both Amara and Alex in an impossible position. It's nice to meet you too, Amara managed to say. You know, Elena said, settling into one of the chairs across from Alex's desk like she planned to stay, you look so familiar. Have we met before? I don't think so, Amara replied, though her voice sounded strained even to her own ears. Alex was standing very still, and Amara could see the confusion on his face. He was listening to every word, trying to make sense of a conversation that didn't quite add up. Well, I should let you two get back to work, Elena said after a moment that felt like an eternity. But perhaps we could all have dinner sometime? I'd love to hear more about your honeymoon plans. We haven't finalized anything yet, Amara said quickly. Oh, that's surprising. Most newlyweds can't wait to get away together. Elena's smile was sharp. I'm staying at the Ritz-Carlton if you'd like to reach me. Room 1247. After Elena left, the office felt charged with tension. Alex sat back down at his desk, but Amara could see the wheels turning in his head. That was odd, he said finally. Odd how? Her voice. For a moment when she first spoke she sounded so much like. Alex trailed off, shaking his head. Never mind. It's probably nothing. But Amara could see that it wasn't nothing. Alex was starting to put together pieces of a puzzle he didn't even know existed, and Elena's unexpected appearance had accelerated everything in the worst possible way. That evening Amara couldn't concentrate on anything. She made dinner but burned the vegetables. She tried to read to Alex, but stumbled over words she'd read perfectly a dozen times before. When her phone buzzed with a text message, she jumped like she'd been shot. Everything okay? Alex asked. Fine, Amara lied, checking the message. It was from Elena. Meet me for coffee tomorrow. We need to talk. That night Amara barely slept. She kept imagining different scenarios, different ways this could play out, and none of them ended well. Elena was clearly back to reclaim her life, which meant Amara would have to disappear. But how could she explain that to Alex? How could she just vanish from the life they had built together? The next morning, Amara told Alex she needed to run some errands and met Elena at a coffee shop downtown. Elena looked rested and relaxed, like she had just returned from a vacation instead of abandoning her wedding and her responsibilities. You look good, Elena said as Amara sat down across from her. Marriage suits you. Where have you been? Amara demanded, not in the mood for small talk. Europe mostly. Sometime in the south of France, a few weeks in Italy. I needed space to think. You needed space to think while I was living your life and lying to your husband? Elena had the grace to look slightly ashamed. I know it wasn't fair to you, but you have to admit it worked out well. Alex seems happier than I've ever seen him. That's not the point, Elena. This has gone too far. I can't keep pretending to be you. Actually, Elena said, stirring her coffee with deliberate casualness, I think you can. Amara stared at her friend in disbelief. What is that supposed to mean? I've been thinking about this whole situation and I think we might have stumbled onto the perfect solution. You're clearly better suited for Alex than I ever was. You care about his work, you don't mind his blindness, you've actually helped him adapt. Maybe you should just stay. Stay. Amara's voice rose enough that other customers turned to look. Elena, I can't just steal your life. You wouldn't be stealing it. I'd be giving it to you. Elena leaned forward, her expression earnest. I don't want to be married to Alex. I never did. But I can't be the one to break off the engagement because of the family business implications. If you stay married to him, everyone gets what they want. Except Alex doesn't get the truth. Does he need the truth if he's happy? Elena asked. You said yourself that he seems happier now. Maybe the truth would just hurt him. Amara felt sick. The rational part of her brain could see the logic in Elena's argument, But the part of her that had fallen in love with Alex's honesty and kindness recoiled from the idea of building their entire relationship on a lie. "I won't do it," Amara said firmly. "This has to end. If you don't want to tell Alex the truth, then I will." Elena's expression hardened. "If you tell him the truth, you'll destroy both our families. The merger between Sterling Tech and Richardson Industries is worth hundreds of millions of dollars. My father's political career depends on this alliance. Alex's company stock will crash if this scandal gets out. So you're blackmailing me? I'm presenting you with facts. You can choose to stay and make everyone happy, or you can tell the truth and destroy multiple lives just to ease your own conscience." Amara stood up, feeling dizzy and nauseous. "I need time to think about this." "You have until tomorrow," Elena said coolly. "After that, I'm going to have to start making some difficult decisions about how to handle this situation." As Amara walked back to Alex's apartment, her mind was racing. Elena was right about the consequences of the truth coming out. The scandal would be enormous, both families would be financially devastated, and Alex would be humiliated on a public scale. But continuing the lie meant living every day knowing that her entire marriage was built on deception. When she got home, Alex was waiting for her in the living room with an expression she had never seen before. "We need to talk," he said, and Amara's heart sank. He knew. Somehow, he had figured it out, and now everything was about to fall apart in the worst possible way. Alex was sitting on the couch when Amara walked into the apartment, his posture rigid in a way that immediately set off alarm bells in her head. He looked like a man preparing for battle, and Amara realized with a sinking heart that the careful world they had built together was about to crumble. "How was your morning?" Alex asked, his voice carefully neutral. "Fine," Amara replied, hanging up her purse and trying to keep her expression normal. "Just some errands." "What kind of errands?" The question was simple, but there was something underneath it that made Amara's stomach clench. Alex had never questioned her comings and goings before, had never seemed suspicious of anything she did. Just shopping. Coffee with a friend. The lies felt heavy on her tongue. Which friend? Amara froze. In the 3 weeks she had been pretending to be Elena, she had never mentioned having coffee with anyone. Elena's social circle was small and carefully curated, and most of her friends were more like acquaintances who moved in the same wealthy social circles. "Just someone from college?" Amara said weakly. Alex nodded slowly, like he was filing away her answer for later analysis. "The woman who came to my office yesterday," Alex said, changing direction completely. "Elena Richardson. Tell me about her." Amara's heart started pounding. "What do you want to know? How long have you known her?" We met in college. We've been friends for years." "Interesting," Alex said. "Because when I called her hotel this morning to thank her for stopping by, she told me some very interesting things about our relationship." The blood drained from Amara's face. Elena had talked to Alex. Elena had actually called him back, which meant she had either revealed everything or made the situation infinitely worse. "What did she say?" Amara asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know. "She told me that she was surprised to hear I had gotten married. Since the last time she spoke to you, you weren't sure you wanted to go through with the wedding." Amara felt the walls closing in around her. Elena had been testing the waters, seeing how much she could reveal without destroying everything completely. "She also mentioned that you looked different yesterday. That your voice sounded different than she remembered." "People change," Amara said desperately. "It's been a while since we talked." Alex stood up and moved toward her, and for the first time since she had known him, his blindness felt like a disadvantage for her rather than something she could work around. "Elena," Alex said, and hearing the fake name from his lips felt like a physical blow. "I need you to be honest with me about something." "Of course." "Are you the same woman I was engaged to before my accident?" The question hung in the air between them like a bomb waiting to explode. Amara stared at Alex's face, seeing the confusion and hurt there, and realized that lying to him anymore would be cruel beyond measure. But before she could answer, her phone rang. Elena's name appeared on the screen, and Alex heard the ringtone. "You should answer that," Alex said quietly. "It might be important." Amara's hands were shaking as she answered the call. "Amara?" Elena's voice was urgent. "We have a problem. I just got off the phone with my father. Someone told him about my conversation with Alex yesterday, and he's asking questions." "Elena, I can't talk right now. You have to listen to me. My father is threatening to pull out of the merger if there's any scandal attached to this marriage. If he finds out what we did, both our families will be ruined." Alex had gone very still, and Amara realized he could probably hear both sides of the conversation. "I have to go," Amara said, hanging up quickly. Amara, Alex said quietly. The sound of her real name from his lips was like a physical shock. Amara looked at him and realized that he knew. Maybe he had known for days, maybe he had just figured it out, but the confusion on his face had been replaced by a terrible clarity. How long have you known? She whispered. I started suspecting something was wrong on our wedding day, Alex said. Your voice was different, your touch was different, even the way you moved was different. But I told myself I was imagining things, that the stress of the accident was making me paranoid. Amara sank onto the couch, feeling like her legs wouldn't support her anymore. When did you know for sure? Yesterday when Elena Richardson came to my office. I recognized her voice immediately. It was the voice I expected to hear at our wedding but didn't. Alex sat down beside her, close enough that she could feel the warmth of his body but far enough away that they weren't touching. Who are you? He asked simply. My name is Amara Johnson. I'm Elena's best friend from college. And where is Elena? She couldn't go through with the wedding. She was scared about your blindness, about what people would think, about how different your life would be. She asked me to take her place just for the ceremony, just to avoid the scandal. Just for the ceremony, Alex repeated. But that was 3 weeks ago. She kept asking for more time. She said she was trying to figure out how to fix everything without destroying both families financially. Alex was quiet for a long time, and Amara could see him processing everything she had told him. So our entire marriage is a lie, he said finally. No, Amara said quickly. I mean, yes, the beginning was a lie, but everything since then. Alex, the way I feel about you, the way we've been together, that's all real. How can it be real if you've been pretending to be someone else the entire time? Because I stopped pretending, Amara said desperately. I tried to be Elena at first, but I couldn't. Everything I've said to you, everything I've done, that's been me. The real me. Alex stood up and walked to the window, his back turned to her. Do you have any idea what this means? He asked. The legal implications alone are staggering. We're not legally married because you're not the person named on the marriage license. The merger with Richardson Industries could be voided. The scandal when this gets out will destroy both companies. It doesn't have to get out, Amara said quietly. Alex turned around, and the expression on his face was colder than she had ever seen it. Are you suggesting we continue the lie? I'm suggesting that maybe the truth isn't always the most important thing. Maybe sometimes protecting the people you love is more important. The people I love? Alex's voice was bitter. I don't even know who you are. I've been living with a stranger for 3 weeks, falling in love with someone who doesn't exist. The words hit Amara like physical blows. I do exist. This is who I am. No, Alex said firmly. Amara Johnson might exist, but the woman I married, the woman I've been sharing my life with, she's a fiction. She's a character you created to deceive me. Amara felt tears burning her eyes, but she forced herself to stay strong. What do you want me to do? She asked. I want you to leave, Alex said simply. I want you to pack your things and get out of my apartment and my life. And then I want you to figure out how to undo this mess you and Elena have created. Alex, please. Don't, he said, cutting her off. Just don't. I can't look at you right now without wondering what else you've lied about. I can't trust anything you say because I don't know who's saying it, Amara or Elena or some combination of both. Amara stood up on shaky legs, realizing that this was really happening. Alex was throwing her out, their marriage was over, and she was about to lose the most wonderful thing that had ever happened to her. For what it's worth, she said as she headed toward the guest room to pack, I love you. Not Elena, not the woman you thought you married. Me. I love you, and these have been the happiest 3 weeks of my life. Alex didn't respond, but she could see his shoulders tense as she spoke. An hour later, Amara stood in the apartment's foyer with her suitcase, looking at the man she loved and knowing she might never see him again. I'm sorry, she said one last time. I never meant for any of this to happen. Neither did I, Alex replied, but he didn't turn around to face her. As Amara closed the door behind her, she heard the sound of something breaking from inside the apartment, glass hitting the wall, or maybe something more fragile being shattered beyond repair. Amara spent the next 2 days in a hotel room that Elena paid for, crying and trying to figure out how to fix the disaster her life had become. Elena called every few hours with updates on the situation, as she had started referring to the mess they had created, but each conversation only made everything feel more hopeless. My father is asking too many questions, Elena said during one of their calls. He wants to meet with Alex about the merger details, and he specifically requested that I be there as Alex's wife. Then you'll have to tell him the truth, Amara said numbly. Are you insane? If I tell him the truth, he'll disown me and pull out of the merger. Sterling Tech stock will crash, Alex will lose billions, and both our families will be ruined. Elena, Alex already knows. You threw me out 2 days ago. This whole charade is over. There was silence on the other end of the line, and then Elena said something that made Amara's blood run cold. Not necessarily. What do you mean? I mean that Alex might know the truth but no one else does. If we handle this correctly, we can still salvage the situation. How? You go back to him. You apologize, you tell him you love him, you convince him to keep quiet about the switch. Then I officially disappear, tragic accident, family emergency, whatever, and you stay married to him as Amara instead of Elena. Amara sat up in her hotel bed, feeling sick. Elena, that's insane. Alex will never agree to that. He will if he understands the consequences of the truth coming out. He's a businessman, Amara. He'll make the rational choice. The rational choice is to end this lie and deal with the consequences. The rational choice is to protect everyone involved, including Alex. Do you think he wants to be the center of a scandal about marriage fraud? Do you think he wants to explain to the business world that he was so blind, literally and figuratively, that he didn't notice when his bride was switched at his own wedding? Amara closed her eyes, hating that Elena's words made a twisted kind of sense. I won't manipulate him, Amara said firmly. If he wants nothing to do with me, I'll respect that. Then you're both fools, Elena said and hung up. That evening, Amara was packing her few belongings to check out of the hotel when someone knocked on her door. She looked through the peephole and her heart stopped. Alex was standing in the hallway, looking tired and rumpled in a way she had never seen him. His usually perfect hair was messy, his clothes looked like he had slept in them, and there were dark circles under his eyes. Alex, she said, opening the door. How did you find me? Elena told me where you were staying. He paused. Can I come in? Amara stepped aside, watching as Alex moved carefully into the unfamiliar space. He had his white cane with him, which he hadn't used since their first week together, and seeing it reminded her of how much progress he had made with her help. Why are you here? Amara asked softly. Alex was quiet for a moment, standing in the middle of the small hotel room like he wasn't sure what to do with himself. I've been thinking about what you said. About love and truth and what's most important. Amara's heart started to beat faster, but she forced herself not to hope for too much. And I realized that I've been angry at the wrong person. Alex turned toward the sound of her voice, and Amara could see the exhaustion and pain on his face. You didn't create this situation, Amara. Elena did. You were trying to help a friend and protect 2 families from scandal. What you did was wrong, but your motives were good. That doesn't excuse the lying. No, it doesn't. But it explains it. Alex moved closer to her, close enough that she could smell his cologne and see the fine lines of stress around his eyes. I've been thinking about the last 3 weeks, trying to figure out what was real and what was an act. Alex. Let me finish, he said gently. The way you helped me at work, the way you read to me, the way you made me feel like I wasn't broken or helpless, that was real, wasn't it? Amara nodded, then remembered he couldn't see her. Yes, that was all real. The way you held my hand when we walked, the way you laughed at my jokes, the way you made breakfast every morning even though Elena never cooked anything in her life, that was you, not her. Yes. And when you told me you loved me, was that real too? Amara felt tears starting to fall down her cheeks. Yes. That was the most real thing I've ever said. Alex reached out and found her hands, holding them gently in his. Then maybe we can figure out how to move forward from here. What do you mean? I mean that maybe the person I fell in love with was never Elena Richardson. Maybe it was always you, Amara Johnson, and I just didn't know your real name. Amara stared at him, afraid to believe what she was hearing. Are you saying you want to try again? I'm saying that I don't want to lose the best thing that ever happened to me because of a lie that someone else created. I'm saying that maybe love is more important than perfect honesty. Alex paused, and when he continued, his voice was softer. But I need you to promise me something. Anything. No more lies. No more pretending to be someone else. If we do this, we do it as ourselves, Amara and Alex, not Elena and Alexander. Amara threw her arms around him, feeling like her heart might burst from relief and joy. I promise, she whispered against his ear. No more lies. They held each other in the small hotel room, and for the first time in days, Amara felt like she could breathe again. What about the legal issues? She asked after a moment. What about the merger and the scandal? We'll figure it out, Alex said. Elena created this mess so Elena can help us fix it. But whatever happens, we'll face it together. Together, Amara repeated, loving the sound of the word. As they stood there holding each other, both of them knew that the hardest part was still ahead of them. They would have to find a way to untangle the legal complications of their marriage, deal with the business implications of the truth coming out, and somehow convince their families that their unconventional love story was worth protecting. But for the first time since this whole mess began, they would be facing it as a team, with honesty and love instead of deception and fear. The next morning, Alex and Amara sat in a conference room at Sterling Tech with the most expensive legal team money could buy, trying to figure out how to untangle the mess their lives had become. Elena had finally agreed to meet with them, but only after Alex threatened to go public with the entire story. "Let me make sure I understand this correctly," said Margaret Chin, Alex's lead attorney, looking between her notes and the three people sitting across from her. Ms. Richardson was supposed to marry Mr. Sterling, but she fled on the wedding day and asked Ms. Johnson to take her place. Ms. Johnson has been living as Mrs. Sterling for 3 weeks, but they were never legally married because she signed the marriage certificate with a false name. "That's correct," Alex said grimly. "And now Mr. Sterling wants to actually marry Ms. Johnson, while Ms. Richardson wants to disappear entirely from the situation." "Also correct." Margaret rubbed her temples like she was developing a headache. "This is going to be a legal nightmare." Elena, who had been silent through most of the meeting, finally spoke up. "It doesn't have to be complicated. I can arrange to have the marriage annulled on the grounds that the wrong person signed the certificate. Then Alex and Amara can get married properly, and I'll release a statement saying I decided we weren't compatible and wish them well." "And what about the merger between Sterling Tech and Richardson Industries?" Margaret asked. "That's where things get complicated," Elena admitted. "My father structured the deal around the marriage alliance between our families. If I'm not married to Alex, he might try to back out of the agreement." Alex leaned forward in his chair. "What's your father's main concern? The business partnership or the social alliance?" "Both, but mostly the business partnership. He wants access to Sterling Tech's patents and distribution network. The marriage was just a way to ensure the families stayed connected." "Then we restructure the deal," Alex said. "We remove the personal element and make it purely about business. Richardson Industries gets what they want, Sterling Tech gets what we want, and nobody has to sacrifice their personal happiness for a corporate merger." Elena looked skeptical. "My father isn't going to be happy about this." "Your father will be a lot less happy if the truth comes out and both companies are destroyed by the scandal," Amara pointed out. Margaret was taking notes furiously. "This could work, but we'll need to move quickly. The longer this deception continues, the worse the legal implications become." "How quickly?" Alex asked. "Ideally, we'd want to have everything resolved within the next week. The annulment, the new business agreement, and if you two are serious about getting married properly, that ceremony as well." Alex turned toward Amara, reaching for her hand across the conference table. "Are you ready for a very unconventional courtship?" he asked with a slight smile. "I think our entire relationship has been unconventional," Amara replied, squeezing his hand. Over the next 3 days, their lives became a whirlwind of legal documents, business negotiations and family meetings. Elena's father was furious when he learned the truth, but Alex's revised business proposal was too good for him to ignore. The merger would proceed, but as a straightforward corporate acquisition rather than a marriage alliance. The hardest part was dealing with Alex's parents, who felt betrayed and confused by the deception. "How could you let this happen, Alexander?" his mother asked during a tense family dinner. "How could you not know that you were living with a complete stranger?" "Because she didn't feel like a stranger," Alex replied calmly. "She felt like the person I was meant to be with. But she lied to you for weeks. She lied to protect everyone in this room from a scandal that would have destroyed both our families. And in the process, she helped me adapt to my blindness, supported my work, and made me happier than I've ever been in my life." Alex's father was more practical in his concerns. "What do we know about this woman's background? Her family, her finances, her intentions?" "I know that she's a special education teacher who spends her days helping children with disabilities," Alex said. "I know that she's kind, intelligent, and honest about everything except the one lie that Elena forced her to tell. And I know that I love her more than I've ever loved anyone." Amara sat quietly through most of these conversations, feeling like an intruder in rooms full of people discussing her fate. But when Alex's mother asked directly what her intentions were, she found her voice. "I intend to love your son for the rest of my life," she said simply. "I intend to support his dreams, challenge him when he needs it, and be the partner he deserves. I can't undo the way we met, but I can promise you that everything I do from now on will be honest and real." By the end of the week, the legal paperwork was finalized. Elena's marriage to Alex was officially annulled, the business merger was restructured, and a small, private ceremony was scheduled for the following Saturday where Alex and Amara would be married properly as themselves. Elena came to see Amara the night before the wedding. "I owe you an apology," Elena said as they sat in Amara's hotel room. "I put you in an impossible situation, and I kept making it worse instead of fixing it." "Why?" Amara asked. "Why did you keep pushing for me to stay instead of just coming back and dealing with the consequences?" Elena was quiet for a moment. "Because I was jealous," she admitted. "You were so good at being Alex's wife. You made him happy in ways I never could, never even wanted to. And I realized that I had never really wanted him at all, I just wanted what he represented. And now I'm going to take some time to figure out what I actually want instead of what other people expect me to want. Maybe travel, maybe go back to school, maybe try being single for a while and see who I am when I'm not trying to impress anyone." Elena hugged Amara goodbye, and for the first time since college, it felt like they were really friends instead of just two people who happened to know each other well. "Be happy," Elena said as she left. "You deserve it." That night, Amara couldn't sleep. Tomorrow she would marry Alex for real, with her own name and her own vows and her own promises. There would be no deception, no hidden agendas, just two people choosing to build a life together. Her phone buzzed with a text from Alex. "Can't sleep. Too excited about tomorrow." She typed back, "Me too. I love you." "I love you too, soon-to-be Mrs. Sterling." The real Mrs. Sterling this time. Amara smiled in the darkness of her hotel room, thinking about how strange it was that the most beautiful love story of her life had started with the biggest lie she had ever told. But maybe that was how the best love stories worked. They started with impossible circumstances and ended with people choosing each other anyway despite all the reasons they shouldn't. Tomorrow she would marry the man she loved and it would be real and honest and theirs. Finally, completely theirs. The morning of their real wedding, Amara woke up to sunlight streaming through the windows of the bridal suite at the small boutique hotel where the ceremony would take place. Unlike the elaborate cathedral wedding 3 weeks ago, today's ceremony would be simple and intimate, just immediate family and a few close friends in the hotel's garden. She had chosen a simple white dress, nothing like the elaborate gown Elena had worn. This dress was hers, bought with her own money, and it felt like the most beautiful thing she had ever owned. A knock on her door interrupted her thoughts. "Come in," she called, expecting her maid of honor, her sister Sarah, who had flown in from Chicago. Instead, Alex's voice answered. "It's me. Can I come in?" "Alex, you're not supposed to see me before the ceremony." "Technically, I can't see you anyway," Alex said, and she could hear the smile in his voice. "Besides, I have something for you." Amara opened the door to find Alex standing in the hallway in his wedding suit, looking more handsome than she had ever seen him. In his hands was a small wrapped box. "What's this?" she asked. "Open it." Inside the box was a pair of simple diamond earrings, elegant and classic. "They were my grandmother's," Alex said. "My mother gave them to me this morning. She said she wanted you to have something that belonged to our family." Amara felt tears prick her eyes. After all the tension and disapproval of the past week, this gesture from Alex's mother felt like an acceptance she hadn't dared hope for. "Alex, I can't." "You can," he said firmly. "You're going to be my wife. Really truly my wife. You belong in this family." As Amara put on the earrings, Alex reached up and touched her face gently. "Are you ready for this?" he asked. "I've been ready since the day I met you," she replied honestly. "Even though you didn't know it at the time?" "I think part of me knew. I think that's why Elena's plan worked so well, because being with you felt natural from the very beginning." Alex kissed her softly, and for the first time, there were no lies between them, no secrets, no pretenses. An hour later, Amara walked down the garden path toward Alex, who was waiting for her under an arch of white roses. The ceremony was small but perfect, with heartfelt vows they had written themselves. "Amara," Alex said when it was his turn to speak, 3 weeks ago I thought I was marrying someone I knew well. Instead, I married a stranger who became the love of my life. You taught me that love isn't about perfect circumstances or careful planning. It's about finding someone who sees the best in you and helps you become the person you're meant to be." "Alex," Amara replied through tears, "you showed me that real love means accepting someone completely, flaws and mistakes and all. You forgave me for a lie that could have destroyed us both, and you chose to build something real from something that started as pretense. I promise to spend the rest of my life proving that your faith in me was justified." When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, The kiss they shared was everything their first kiss should have been: honest, passionate, and full of promises for the future. As they turned to face their small group of family and friends, Alex suddenly stopped and gripped Amara's arm. "What is it?" she whispered. "I can see you," he said, his voice filled with wonder. "Amara, I can actually see you." The crowd around them gasped as Alex stared at his new wife's face for the first time. The doctors had said his sight might return gradually, but no one had expected it to happen so suddenly or so completely. "You're beautiful," Alex said softly, reaching up to touch Amara's face as he looked at her. "You're even more beautiful than I imagined." "Can you really see me?" Amara asked, laughing and crying at the same time. "I can see everything. The flowers, the garden, my parents." Alex turned to look around at their wedding guests, seeing their faces for the first time in weeks. "But mostly I can see you, and you're perfect." As they walked back down the aisle together, Alex's sight fully restored and their marriage finally real and legal, Amara thought about how strange life could be. She had started this journey trying to save Elena from a mistake, and ended up finding her own happiness with a man who had taught her what real love could look like. Their reception was held in the hotel's ballroom, and Alex spent the entire evening looking at everything and everyone like he was seeing the world for the first time. But mostly he looked at Amara. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked as they danced to their first song as a properly married couple. "The way we met, all the complications we had to go through?" Amara looked into her husband's eyes, eyes that could see her now, that would never again have to rely on touch and sound to know her. "Never," she said firmly. "I regret the lying and the deception, but I don't regret anything that led me to you. Even if I had to do it all over again, even knowing how complicated it would be, I'd still say yes when Elena asked for my help." "Why?" "Because it brought me to you. And you're worth any amount of complication." As they swayed together on the dance floor, surrounded by family and friends who had finally accepted their unconventional love story, Alex and Amara both knew that they had found something rare and precious, a love that had survived deception, scandal, and seemingly impossible circumstances to become something beautiful and real. Their story had started with the wrong bride at the altar, but it was ending with exactly the right people in exactly the right place, building a life together based on honesty, trust, and the kind of love that could overcome anything. Later that night, as they sat on the balcony of their honeymoon suite, watching the stars and talking about their future, Alex took Amara's hand and squeezed it gently. "I have a confession," he said. "Please tell me it's not another secret identity," Amara laughed. "Nothing like that. I just wanted you to know that even when I couldn't see you, I knew you were the one. Not because of anything you did or said, but because of how you made me feel. Like I was exactly where I belonged." "That's how you made me feel too," Amara replied. "Like I had been looking for home my whole life and finally found it." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the city lights below them and thinking about the journey that had brought them together. It hadn't been simple or straightforward, but it had been worth every complicated moment. And as Alex looked at his wife's face in the moonlight, able to see her clearly for the first time, he knew that sometimes the most beautiful love stories were the ones that started in the most impossible ways.